Hello, everybody. Today for this Aotearoa wide, or I should have said Kiora, really, session with Jutta Eckstein, who's dialing in from Germany, on the topic enabling digital sustainability. And before we actually started and had a chat, I asked Jutta, where do you actually figure, when did your agile journey start? And she mentioned that number probably around 1995, 1996. So quite long ago. And there is a story behind it. Jutta, do you have one or two sentences? I think they come better from you than from myself.
Yeah, well, it was really a kind of a classic. It was at a conference at UPSLA, which was at the time kind of one of the biggest conferences we had around '00. If anyone remembers that, you can tell I'm old. And I was sitting down with Ken Beck in the lobby at the hotel, and he was scratching out on the napkin his ideas about XP and said, "Oh, what are you thinking about this?" And I guess he shared it with me. So of course I knew him, but I had been in the patterns community and a small talk programmer, and this is kind of both where it originated from. Yeah, really
Awesome.
funny.
Very cool. And actually, Jutta, she published a few books quite a while ago. And I think these were, I'm not sure if it was the first books about scaling, but possibly at least some of the first books about scaling without
It was the first book about scaling, the one.
Yeah, and
So
without
it was my
mentioning,
first book, and it was worldwide the first one on scaling in the Agile space.
yeah,
Thank you, Jeremy.
and that's amazing. And what I love about it, it's without framework. It's literally, it's about agility rather than, like, yeah. Or
Well, and you need to stop me because I can't get there anywhere.
Yeah.
But the thing for me was really, I thought about giving it a name, but I thought, well, actually, even if you scale, it's still Agile. It doesn't need a different name. So that was really for me a thing. That's also why it's not a framework also.
Yeah. So maybe we can get back to that afterwards, because those who want to hang in, we will stay just to have a chat around where Agile is coming from. Jutta has done the whole journey, especially because we've got a bit of a dip at the moment in New Zealand. And maybe it's pretty cool to hear of those who've maybe seen from the one who's seen a few dips, ups and downs along the way already. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I need to read this, Jutta. She's actually quite qualified to presenting what she does today, because she has also trained as a pollution control commissioner on ecological environment. Yeah, and I think that's how you came to combine your passions, if I may say that, of Agile and sustainability, right?
That's true.
We both met in Hamburg on a project in a larger private bank, and went around the lake having a chat about culture. And that's how I got to know Jutta. So we've actually met in person before the pandemic. And that's why, yeah, we kept in touch. And I thought at some point, why not having her in New Zealand? And thanks to all of the meetups, like 4 of them, 2 in Auckland, 1 in Christchurch, 1 in Wellington, where I'm actually not the organizer from, but they made me one. We are having an Aotearoa-wide meetup here today, which is pretty awesome to have you all here. I'm normally the organizer of the Kanban New Zealand meetup group, if you don't know that yet, and Agile Valley. I'm more like a representative today. I'm not usually organizing that. And there is Jeremy for Christchurch, and I think Leon is possibly also an organizer there. And Ziggy, not sure if Ziggy is already here. He's from the Agile Auckland meetup. And I see Sandy's just joined as well. Hi, Sandy. And yeah, so after the talk, we will hang in here with Jutta around Agile journeys, what's the state of the Agile today, what's she seeing and things like that. An anecdote maybe, because of her being in the Agile space so long, I jokingly call her an Agile dinosaur, and she jokingly responds, but one that's still alive. So cool. And I would say, yeah.
Some people refer to that as a survivor. I'm a
Yeah.
survivor.
Cool. So maybe we can give us some tips how we can survive.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
I would say, Jutta, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Silke. So I'm sharing my screen, and here is this complicated qualification that I have here, what you had to read out. I have to read it out as well. And the books that I've published, and actually so the one on scaling was my first one in 2004. I don't want to go over all of that, but I kind of, as we heard, in the Agile field for quite some time. The last book that I've published is one that I made a little bit bigger, which is often also called the Bossa Nova book, which is on company-wide agility. I'm pointing that out because we ended, I co-wrote it with John Buck. We ended that book with like, okay, now that your company is agile, what does it actually mean? And we thought it means you do have a responsibility for the society, for the ecosystem around you. And that means also it's kind of already bridging into sustainability. And one of the things that we pointed out at the end of the book was, well, we talk a lot about customer focus in Agile, but if you look at it from that aspect, you're as a company are Agile and what's your responsibility? Then we said, well, actually this shifts now, that customer focus now means that we have to understand the economic, also the ecologic, the societal and social environment, all of that as a customer. So, and I shorten this nowadays and say, well, actually, the planet is also a customer or a stakeholder for all that we are doing. So this is kind of, where I wanted to start with. And well, let's try that. I've created a Menti because we have to have a Menti here. And the thing is, why I'm putting this up is the World Economic Forum, and you might have read this in the abstract, said that, why is it not showing properly? Maybe it does once you are going there. I'm not sure. Now it does. Okay, I have to click on it. The World Economic Forum said that digitalization has the ability to reduce the carbon emissions by 15%, which is huge. And so, because I assume that a lot of us are in the software field somehow, or in IT in some way. So how do you think this can be done by digitalization? So what is it that we can do to really reduce that carbon footprint? And let me see, I also would like to, where is the chat? I should have done that right away. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, that's good. I also have it as a bit.ly, but both of it should work. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, moving to the cloud definitely has a big impact. Also, software as a service has a big impact, right? Not sure if it really has 15% actually. But yet still, it will make a difference if we keep doing stuff like that. Online instead of paper, right? Yeah, that's a thing. Smart power grids. AI taking over, of course. Well, online seminars like we are doing right now, remote meetings. Yes. What else? Stopping digitalization. I'm interested to hear more about that, what that means. How this can save if we all stay home and not connect anymore or something. the reduced need to commute goes together with online meetings and online seminars and remote meetings and remote working. So it's all about that. Yes. And actually, there is more stuff that seems to be more important. And let me see. More data analysis. Now we are getting there, right? So this is the direction what the World Economic Forum is thinking about. So if we look at what's possible with digitalization, it's exactly like monitoring and modeling. For example, you can have digital twins where you model stuff, or you have the climate models and you prepare for the future, or you can influence consumer behavior, not only in a bad way, but also in a positive way. The question is, well, actually for all of that, are we doing enough of all of that? Then enabling the full supply chain and ensuring, for example, life cycle transparency, so we know what's going on and can support the stuff we want to support, automated optimization of energy and natural resources. So one example could be also water management, or if you think of all the agriculture stuff that where actually digitalization is the thing that can make a whole difference here. And then also participatory environmental governance, and actually they even say agile and participatory environmental governance. So it is the thing about like stressing democracy. I know we have a lot of areas in the world, well, this is at the moment more in the question, but the thing is, what can digitalization do? So this is kind of what the World Economic Forum had in mind when saying like 15%, and that would be cool if we could do that. Now, I'm not so much into the modeling, but more in the area of what also you pointed out, where you could see the improvements. And I want to also focus more on those. And I would like to do that by looking first at kind of some of the facts around what we are doing. And well, it's my assumption that we do similar stuff, but I'm not sure if that's true. Then looking at some insights, what can we get in terms of insights from those facts? And then what is it that we actually can do here? And now I see already the question here. That's why I'm looking at the digital twins. That's an interesting, so that probably needs a discussion. So the digital twins, how they think about it is more like learning early on what's happening to the environment by building a digital twin of where whatever is happening. So you can even think like in terms of floods or heat, or what does it do like with specific trees if you see how the weather is changing due to the climate change. But about the conscious consumer, I think we need to discuss that later. And please come back to me, Paris, or to our whole group here. Okay, so let's start looking at the facts.
I've noted the question, so we'll come back to that later.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Silke, for doing that. Okay, if we now look at the facts, I first want to look a little bit into what sustainability really means in terms of IT, of software development, of digitalization. And in the same way as we look into sustainability for a different context, I also want to do this here by looking at it from 3 different angles. And the first one is the social angle or social pillar. And that stands for aiming for equity, health, and livability. What comes into mind here, if we think of that digitalization, is diversity, safety, security, privacy, inclusion, all of that stuff. And I believe, at least in the Agile space, we talk a lot about that. And so there is something going on. If we are doing it good enough is maybe another thing. And I will also show a few examples around that later on. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is the environment. And that's the thing that comes first into mind, especially if we talk about carbon emission reduction. So green software, green IT is what we are talking about here. So it's typically about energy consumption. Then the third one is about economic or prosperity. And what comes with that, or kind of the slogan that comes with it, is improving the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. I would like you to try to remember that, because I want to come back to this just in a couple of minutes. And what we are talking about here is sustainable economies, or that the products we are creating are really also responsible for what's going on in the society because of the products we put into the world here. So I would like to provide a few examples for all of these three fields, and they are all negative, I believe. I'm sorry for that. And there could be also positive ones, but we start there. So hopefully we increase the awareness this way. So if we are looking at the social part, then I just recently learned that body scanners, you all know them, I guess, from the airport. So where we go through and are scanned for whatever stuff we are bringing. However, the software actually is built in a way that it asks for a binary decision, male or female, with really, if you really want to learn more about it, I can highly recommend, or maybe not so much, to dig into that and search for it. These stories are really horrible that non-binary people or transgender are experiencing at the airport. And it's actually for no reason. The reason is the software asked for male, female. And yeah, of course you can say somebody has asked for that, and that's why the software is built like that. But anyway, so it is software in the end that's, in this case, not inclusive. Then another example, if you look at the environment, last year, we in IT managed to have higher carbon emissions than aviation. And you probably heard a lot of discussions about, oh, we should all stop flying. I've never heard that somebody said, oh, we should stop using IT. Well, somebody said we should stop digitalization, when I asked that question before. But it's really the case that the carbon emissions of IT are much bigger than I believe we all think. And even I know those numbers, that we are now at over 3% of the whole carbon emissions with IT. I still kind of think, because I don't see it, sense it, it's hard to grasp. But still, that's the fact. An example about, well, improving the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. Here's an example that got through the news by the whistleblower of Frances Hogan on Instagram, where we learned that the algorithm kind of knows that 13.5% say it makes them thinking of suicide even worse, or making eating disorders worse. So 17% are saying that of the girls. The thing is, the software definitely doesn't improve the lives of those girls. And again, it's software, it's an algorithm that does that, and it's ignoring it. So really a difficult topic here. And if we look at, there are of course many more examples, and what I wanted to bring across here again is that really all these three pillars together is what we look at when we talk about sustainability. Now, I started off with World Economic Forum says digitalization can improve the carbon emissions by 15%. However, what's also clear to everyone, and what you can see with these examples, there are also threats that digitalization provides. And the threats are typically also in 3 categories. The one is emissions. Well, obviously, because, well, we have this, we have now overtaken the aviation industry. Then the other thing is the digital divide. I didn't really talk much about it. Well, of course, it's the body scanner is one example because it's not about inclusion, but digital divide can also mean that, well, if I'm not able to connect digitally, then I might be completely left out, which is also true for whole countries and regions. And the third point is electronic waste. And I brought some data here with me, and I thought of looking it up for New Zealand, Australia. And first of all, New Zealand generates about 20.1 kilogram per capita of e-waste yearly. And just so you know, this is really among the highest volumes of e-waste in the world, while having among the lowest documented recycling rates. The thing is per capita, because the country, of course, is not as big as some others. It's probably in total not as much as probably Germany, I'm sure. Then we have 88% of the 4 million computers and 3 million TVs that are purchased in Australia yearly. They all end up in landfill. And in Australia, it is that fewer than 1% of the TVs and around only 10% of the PCs and laptops are really recycled in Australia. And the thing is that we should all be aware of that 98% of the components in our computers or television can be fully recycled. So it's possible. And okay, you might think of, why am I talking about? I'm doing software, not hardware. At least that's what I thought when I first heard about these numbers. The thing is that so often it is software that's motivating us to create e-waste. Just if you think of your phone, when do you buy a new phone? Typically when the software is not working properly anymore, when the OS is not supported anymore, when the apps are not running in a good way anymore, then you start buying a new phone. And it's similar to our clients, because very often the systems that we are creating is expecting them to have the latest hardware, the best connectivity and all of that. And if they don't, then they can't use the system in a proper way. So it's also in the software that we are creating for our clients that we can do better in supporting old hardware for not contributing to this huge amount of e-waste. And I will get back to that as well. Okay, so this is about the fact, and I'm a bit distracted seeing it seems that it's difficult to get in here in the meeting, and I wonder if it's that link that has been changed or whatever.
I think it's all sorted now from what I understand.
Oh, this is good to hear. I'm glad. Okay, looking at insights. I guess you all have seen in the one way or the other about the Kinefin model. And I'm now a bit confused what's happening here. Very strange. Okay, the Kinefin model yes, you know about it. So at least I assume that it looks at the context we are in, and the context, if it's like a clear thing, then we know what we do. We can use best practices. If it's complicated, then we need to be an expert. Like if we are here, we need to have expert knowledge and in order to move forward. If it's complex, there's no real relation between cause and effect, so we need to experiment. And if it's chaotic, there's no other way than acting first. And what I'm confused with is, and I need to put all of them here, is the order of the pictures. So why I'm bringing this, the thing is that we means the society, and also if I think of governments, we are acting as if we are looking at a complicated problem. So I see plans in the EU that last till 2050, where we think about, oh, by 50 we want to do this or want to do that, and have this long-term plan. However, the difficulty is really the situation we are in is complex, and we cannot have a long-term plan like that because, well, if I only think about this, we are ending up in 2050 and then realize, oh, this is not working the way we thought. So we really have to be more adaptive than that. Now, on the other hand, just the other extreme is the chaotic, and well, one of the examples is often the house is on fire, so you act right away. Of course, you don't make a long plan and say, oh, Silke, you need to do this, and then we make another meeting or whatever, and then we see what's next. So of course, we all get out of the house. Now, I'm bringing this as well because Greta Thunberg said, I think it was also at the World Economic Forum, your house is on fire. I want you to panic. So clearly she was saying, I guess without really knowing, but she was saying or assuming that we are in the chaotic space here. The problem with that is, if we are in the chaotic space and if the house is on fire, then on the one hand, sometimes it can mean we are paralyzed and we are not acting at all because we are in panic. I want you to panic. And the other thing is that we are also often follow kind of blind actions. But what we need to do instead is really the typical thing which we do in the complex space is probing, sensing, responding. And that's the thing I would say we all in the Agile community know a lot about, because that was the whole reason why Agile came up. Because we figured the projects got bigger and bigger, and therefore there's no way of this long-term plan and assuming this is how it's working out. We figured, well, the client changed his mind, or we discover something new regarding the technology or whatever, and therefore we need to get quick feedback loops, adjust and adapt. And that's why I think it's also our responsibility to actually do something about that, because we know how to do stuff. Okay, these are the insights. And now looking at, oh, come on. Now we got, looking at now what? So this is what you can do. And I want to start with stories. And I probably will repeat this a couple of times. Bear with me. It's not important if you write a story or a requirement or whatever a need is in this way or in any other way. I just used it because I know a lot of books write about the connector form, like this one, as a whatever. I'm the one who has that need, and I have that need, I want to, so I can, and this is the value. So you all, well, I assume most of you have seen that. And again, the form is really unimportant. So it is who needs what and why. That's whatever it is. What I would like us to do now is not only looking at the need who needs it and how can we measure it and why is that needed and so on from that perspective, but also that we look into it. What's actually the impact of that need, of that story? What kind of impact is it in terms of the environment, the social aspect, maybe the economic sustainability aspect? So we should also have these discussions when we start talking about needs, requirements, stories, again, however you call them, I don't care really, and how you write them, I don't care either. I would like you to have the discussions about the impact. And here's an example, and if the example is good or bad, that's another thing. I just want to provide one thing. So it could look like that. As a designer, I want to reduce the amount of font time so the page performance will increase for users and pages will be more digestible with the impact of reduced carbon emissions because of less data transfer. So that could be, and again, you can write it in a completely different way. I told you I will repeat this. So it's not about the form. It's really about the content, about having that discussion. And now that we are talking about fonts, I want to do a quick excursion to fonts here. And this is my excursion to fonts. There is a Polish professor, Lukasz, who did research on using various kinds of fonts. And what you can see just by looking at the numbers, even if you don't understand like everything, the thing is that self-hosted fonts are typically a bit better than Google fonts, but what's really taking off is system fonts. And you can think, well, maybe it's not that much, that it's not a huge emission, and that's true too. However, if we think of how many web pages are there, then maybe it adds up to something, and it does make a difference. And so we can really start talking about all kinds of things, and that could be one of the things. Before I keep going on at what else, well, it's also something you can do. But what we really should be also more aware about is what kind of energy is available when and where. Oops, I'm having problems with my mouse, it seems. So there is meanwhile a thing, the electricity map. You can also just search for electricity map, but you see also I've put a QR code there if you want to just jump there if you want. And it shows you climate impact by area. And you can even look at it in two different ways, which is kind of the energy that's consumed or the energy that is produced. And yes, of course, the greener, the better, the darker, the worse. And that is where you can find out what kind, and you can even say time of day or even like month in a year where you can look it up. And this way, you know a little bit better what kind of energy is actually available in your area and when. Why am I saying that? Because we can make use of that. We can make use of it, for example, for energy aware operations. We can understand, first of all, when is low carbon electricity available, or when is the energy mix renewable, and then start acting on it. For example, asynchronous operations, we can execute them at times where the energy mix is renewable or less carbon intense. So for tests, for non-critical jobs, whatever. So that could be one thing that we are doing. Another thing also related to energy, and that's actually for some already easier. I saw that when I asked the question, how can we reduce the carbon emissions by 15% as expected by the World Economic Forum, some people said like going to the cloud is one thing. And this is really true in general, but it can even have a higher percentage if we are more aware about choosing the cloud. And this is possible by now. So this is the Google Cloud Region Picker. And what you can see is the first thing here says low carbon footprint. So we can even do this by now and asking for a low carbon footprint and choosing the cloud because of that. There are, just to give you some other ideas. What else is possible? Well, here's also the bit.ly link to the Google Region Picker, but you can also just search for it. You will find it. Amazon and Azure are also providing information about that, where you could go with your cloud, and you can now really do that and make a difference. And all too often, at least in the project I'm in, or the products I help developing, we don't even think about that. Often we think about the price, the latency, well, just the other things that you're seeing there. This is more the typical motivation, and they are still important. I'm not saying this is not important, but you can also look at other stuff like what is the carbon footprint of the cloud you're choosing. I want to switch the topic a little bit and go into the direction of social sustainability. What is it that you can do there? And I want to look into a thing that's called a persona spectrum. And a persona spectrum helps you to make your system accessible to everyone. Very often when we talk about accessibility, we think about, well, people being blind or deaf or whatever. However, what this persona spectrum helps, at least me, to understand is that everyone benefits from that. It's not only making it accessible and better usable, and therefore your system more inclusive for a specific group of people. Most often it means that it's better usable for everyone. And I want to give you the example of the hearing here, what makes perhaps a bit clearer what it's meant with the persona spectrum. Of course, people can have completely hearing problems, like they are deaf really, and therefore you need to think about if you have a voice control in your system or anything like that, you navigate through speech and audio, then maybe that's not working anymore. However, that is a permanent problem, if you will, or challenge. However, there are also people who have temporary that problem. Like if you have an ear infection, you might not be able to hear good enough, or situational. If you are in a bar and it's very noisy around you, maybe it's not working either. So if you look at the persona spectrum, it really tells you like, okay, there are these various, there's this continuum, like permanent, temporary, situational, and that can all, when you think of more accessibility, better be addressed. And therefore, the whole system will be better usable if we keep that in mind. So that's one possibility that we can do. Another thing that we can do, and this comes back to the e-waste. So I've gone through like the emissions, then the digital divide was the persona spectrum, and now I want to go in the direction of electronic waste. Remember the three main threats for digitalization. So supporting older hardware. So the one thing is that I think we really should do is we should think about sustainability toggles that helps us deactivating non-supported features, or what's also known as responsive design. How this could work, I want to elaborate a little bit about. So feature toggles is something that's known for quite some time, and it typically is looked at from two different angles. So one is, how long do we need that toggle and how dynamic is it? So longevity and dynamism. Dynamism, is this how it's pronounced? I'm not sure. A very typical one is release toggle. So for example, you have been working on this new feature, but well, it didn't make it on time and you are releasing, I don't know, maybe daily or whenever, weekly or bi-weekly, it doesn't matter. However, that feature is not done. Of course, you don't want the user to try to use that feature and then run into a failure mode or error or whatever. And therefore, you use a feature toggle to ensure that this feature is not reachable, so nobody can use that. So that's a typical release toggle. And most often, it's not available for long because hopefully with their next release, that feature will be available. It's also not very dynamic because most often it only is used at when the system is started and it's kind of put in place there. If we look at very dynamic toggles, then you see there are experiment toggles, and they are kind of in a different extreme, which is typical A/B testing. So it's very dynamic because you actually want to know if that feature is like better by people or that one, or is, I don't know, creating more business or the other one. So it's very dynamic. It depends on the user using it. And it's more likely that you have it in place for weeks, not months and years, but also not for days, because you want to have a good analysis there. And now, what I also want to bring your attention to, I don't want to go over all of them, is permission toggles, which is a very typical thing is, well, if I log into a system, then depending on my credentials, I can use this or that part of the system. And exactly this is where sustainability toggles come in. Sustainability toggles are really meant to, like, okay, if there's Jutta sitting in front of the system and trying to use it, but her machine is really, I don't know, how old is mine now? I think like 5 years, and perhaps not everything is working the way it should, or maybe I have an old OS or something on my machine, then the sustainability toggles will ensure that only those features are available that are supported by the client, really. And so this is kind of an easy way that we can do in order to not enforce our users to buy new hardware in a very frequent way. So this is a way how we can also support our systems for much longer time. Okay, so I think this is all that I wanted to kind of put an angle on, in a way of, look, these are things you can do, but I also would like you to explore what else is out there. And we have created a survey where I want to invite you to take that survey, and I need to look at, I believe, that's the link that I sent earlier. I sent the wrong bit.ly link. I just see that. So this is the bit.ly link. That was the wrong one before. Where I want to invite you to go over that survey. I think it has about 12 statements or so, just in order to understand where are we with digital sustainability? What are maybe the various areas where we can get better? And of course, we want to look at the data later on together. And let's see. I give you a little bit of time to answer.
We should have some background groove music now.
Yeah, yeah. Digital sustainability. So it's about digitalization being sustainable, and sustainability is defined with these 3 angles: social, environmental, and economic. So it really means we are looking at all these different areas. I'm not sure if this is good enough. And if you, yeah, can digital stuff help the species and the planet survive? The World Economic Forum says yes, by like the digital twins, by the monitoring, by having better water management, by more better agriculture systems and all of that. However, it can also make things worse. And this is the thing about the emission digital divide and the e-waste. So, and I'm waiting for the context of the survey. It's about a product. Yeah, I could have said that. So it's about whatever system you are building right now, or what system product you have been built if you're not working on a product, on a project, on a system right now. So it is most often, in my case, it would be the software that we are creating. Thank you for all these questions. And if you are not working on a team right now, then it's really more about what kind of team do you have in mind, perhaps one you work with last, and the same for the product. I see we have a few data points coming in. I want to wait a little bit longer. We have like 9 data points. In order to make it meaningful, I wait a little bit longer. Where are we now? Still. Sure. Let's see. Perhaps we start looking at it. And we still have the 9. Perhaps we do another refresh. Perhaps another data point is coming in. 12. Okay, we have a few more. Very good. Okay, so if we would be on the outer circle, of course, it would be like it's true for us. This is what we do. We are working in a sustainable way. And what we see right away is that we are much better in the social area than, for example, in the environmental. So social, we have 3.975 would be the outer circle. Then the economic, that's on the second thing, the 3.39. And yes, as I said, the environmental is the thing that's the worst. And I do another refresh, seeing if some new data is coming in. Okay, 15 data. Let's, and it's even more extreme now. Okay, we are 4.11 now with the social. Let's dig into the social part. And we had these 3 different statements. And the one that's, I believe, the highest is the team prevents discrimination, disrespecting, or targeting of team members. I would say this shouldn't be a surprise to us. That's at least what we claim in the Agile community, that we take care of that. And it's important to us that people feel being included, and they are included as well in the teams. Then we have the second one, the team implements policies to ensure the balance of great user experience with protecting privacy. I guess this comes also from the discussion that we are having for quite some time on privacy, safety, security, which actually gives me also hope, because this discussion, if we think of 10 years ago, not much has happened at the time. Now, that's not so much the case. Sometimes it seems it has, that users have the option to choose what data they share with us. Okay, let's look at the other maybe extreme, and maybe I do another update here in case. No, we are sticking with the 15. Let's look at the environment here. And we have 2 that are kind of the same, around 3.4. the product works also for people using older devices. This is excellent that you are doing this, or a lot of you are doing this. Of course, there's still a way to go till the 5, but at least the people are thinking about this. And this is also what I see in Europe a lot, that companies monitor and proactively seek to reduce waste products, which is more like what's happening in the company. Now, if we look at something like this, that the product, the software, the system informs users before automatically launching or running tasks in the background, that's not so much the case, really. I need to look at that chat note here. Products work for older devices might just mean the code hasn't been updated for years. Very good point. I like that. Cool. Yeah. And maybe we look at the holistic, and then I want to close that also looking at the time. Holistic, we have our sustainability actions aligned with our marketing, which could just mean we are not doing anything like that, and therefore it aligns, or we do a lot. That could also, we don't know, but at least there's some alignment. That's something. We continuously see components that help us create more sustainable solutions. It's kind of a so-so in the middle. And then we, my favorite one, I forgot that this sits here. We prioritize the planet as one of the stakeholders. Well, hopefully this is one of the things that you are inspired by, and you just bring up that topic every once in a while, no matter if you are looking at different needs, requirement stories of your users, or if you think of a retrospective and you just throw that in, what would change if we regard the planet as a stakeholder, and see what kind of discussion is coming up. So I would like to leave it here, and also kind of close it and open it to discussion and see what kind of questions we still have here. So for enabling digital sustainability, I really think, like the one with the planet as a stakeholder, I think we should change our conversations just to have it in the mind. And then we should also think of making sustainability a quality attribute. For example, what about if you're having a definition of done, put it in there and monitor what's going on, or you use it as acceptance criteria for stories, requirements, needs, features. And that could be another possibility. And again, so I want to close with that, but open the floor for discussions. And there is actually something that we've created within the Agile Alliance, the Agile Sustainability Manifesto. You might want to take a look at it. Maybe you want to even sign it. I also provide some links how you are reaching me. And there is the thing, the survey, it's actually a bigger survey. It's, I think, 44 statements. So you also only had an excerpt of it. And it is published under Creative Commons, so you can use it, and please feel free to do that. And maybe this changes the conversations you are having in your teams as well. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you so much, Jutta. Such great insights. Amazing. Really loved it. I hope everybody else too, but I'm pretty sure. I would like to actually tackle 2 questions that Paris had. And I think the first one you had already read by your own, and I'm not sure if, Paris, are you still here? Maybe you want to ask it in your own words?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
so the first question maybe first.
Yeah.
The digital twins.
Yes, correct. So thanks so much for talking about digital twins today. There was one question I have. So just to put some context in there, I'm actually trying to build a digital twin for for a virtual closet. And I keep having a lot of pushback against it. So there's a lot of people who say that they're sustainable and that they wanted to do it, but then when you ask them, do you want to use it? They actually said, no, I don't want to use it. So and the thing is that they find that it's too tedious or too much work. But the fact is that there is a way to actually understand and be aware about your clothing consumption. And so a lot of people who have used it before said that they stopped buying clothes. And then because of the fact that they realized that they have too many clothes in their closet. But this is a challenge where I think that in theory, like if everybody has a virtual closet on their own, then think about it. We don't actually buy clothes that we want, but we are still actually only buy clothes that we need. Yeah. So that was the question.
I like that example. And just I want to put out some data, and you might correct me, Paris, because I assume you know it even better. But to my knowledge, especially fast fashion has the same carbon footprint as the whole traffic industry. Speaking of aviation, ships, cars, like everything together is the same carbon footprint as fast fashion. So you are well there if you think like, oh, clothing has a big impact, and it does. Yeah, I agree. And probably with digital twin, well, actually there's more that falls into that. So if I think about the enhancement of digitalization also, like being transparent of the full supply chain would also help you there. And if you have the digital twin, you can make this transparent, what's really going on. So yes, I agree. And of course, the question still is, are people then looking at it or not? But now with your point here, I guess more people are aware of it. Everyone who is in that meeting today. So very good point. Thank you.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I will be interested to share that. And if anybody is interested, just feel free to reach out to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is great.
Paris, if you like, send me a message and we will share that with the recording details maybe.
Yeah, sure. I will do that. Yeah.
And the second question you had about tick debt.
Yeah. So the second one is basically the reason why I'm asking is because just now I heard about like we should support older devices, and I do agree about it. And but one of the challenges, right? Just to provide some context. So actually, I've been working in the mobile space, and so previously I was working with the teams, and the teams was supporting like 6 to 8 versions of Android. But the problem with that was it was actually quite humongous because of the fact that because they're supporting eight versions, right? And we were trying to like support as much as possible. It actually causes a lot of problems, a lot of things we can't do. A lot of features we can't establish, a lot of plugins, a lot of libraries are all outdated. So we also can't move to newer tech stack that actually be better for the environment. But because we have all these legacy hardwares that we are trying to support, it causes a lot of pain. And so because of that, the final call that we made was that, okay, we are only going to support 3 or 4. And I think that's where the banking system in New Zealand also did the same decision, because they realized that trying to support everybody causes a lot of pain and causes the ability of not progressing at all with their work. And a lot of people you're spending like heaps of money just to maintain everybody's access. So that's where my question comes back is, I understand about supporting hardware, but yeah.
I guess I don't have a good answer. So my answer is actually more in perhaps in a different direction, that the OS needs to be support. So the OS needs to be updated in order to support the old hardware. That this is actually more where we need to get it. And I have an example. I showed you my phone before. So my phone is actually a phone that's called Fairphone. And my last one lasted, it was 1 month short of 7 years. And the thing was also, well, first of all, the Fairphone as a company, they decided to really support the OS quite long. And I think they did this when mine was 5 years old. I didn't have like the very first one, so I guess others were at 7 at that time. The interesting thing was when Fairphone said, well, now we just can't keep updating the OS for that old phone. then the community jumped in and said, well, we will keep doing that. And that's what they did. So this is a really great example that sometimes it is possible. And I do understand the way how you describe the problem. It's really hard, and maybe we can get smarter in a way, perhaps with more responsive design or something. But I believe the real problem lies in that, well, kind of of course, the hardware providers want us to buy new hardware, and especially phones. We really should buy phones. That's what they think. And it's not good. It's really not good. So yeah.
I do Android OS development on devices, and our company makes them, and we get them through Google. And it is a limitation based on the chipset and Android.
That's true.
So Google has a certain chipset that it'll support for a few years. So
Right.
it depends on your development cycle, and they give you a very narrow window that's only connected to a very small group of companies in the world that's can handle Android. So there's only a few companies that's actually allowed to give you a sort of a chipset for a small time. So it's very concentrated, and very small window.
That's very true. That was also kind of the thing where in that case, well, they are supporting Android, the Fairphones, just to stick with that example. And the main problem was the Qualcomm chip that was in there that they couldn't.
We do
really...
Qualcomm chips. Yeah, it's Qualcomm forces you to.
So I understand.
Chips, yeah.
However, and maybe this is my last thing about my phone I'm so proud of, is that what they offer as well is, well, I can go ahead and change a lot of the components, and it's getting even better over time. So this is now the second Fairphone that I'm having. That's the number 4, I think it's called. I'm not sure. And I can go ahead and exchange things like the microphone and chips and all kinds of stuff. And it's easy for me to do that. And if I think of other phones where you cannot even change the battery, then, well, and I said, well, this is the last thing I'm saying about my wonderful phone. I'm not getting any provision, by the way.
Yeah, no, it is a long-term problem because security forces the chip, and the chip forces Android, and Android forces the chip. So you're sort of driven forward regardless.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Question.
There were lots of comments in the chat from Gregalish, I guess that's Craig. Alex, Jess, Mark. Would anyone like to talk in their own words or leave it to the chat? I think it was more comments rather than questions. That's why.
I would like to take one, and I don't know, as long as people think of speaking up. So from Craig, I really like that comment question. We're very lucky to have a gig in this local economic climate, and it is for the military, so I might have tipped the scales a bit down. So there are definitely like situations where thing is harder. However, even if I think of it's in the military, at least in Europe, actually, things have changed. We are more for military than we had been in the past. So for various reasons, I guess you heard about what's going on here as well. So it's not probably seen as bad anymore, but still, even there, you can think about what you can do so that the system has maybe less emissions than it would have otherwise. Of course, if we talk about improving the lives of everyone everywhere, it's maybe a question then. But yeah, the world is also as it is, and there's no way for us to just assuming reality is not there.
Can I ask
I guess
a question?
What I want to say, yeah, go ahead.
It was just to follow up on what something Leon said. I mean, look, I'm not technical, so I'm assuming most of you are technical, but I'm in the service delivery side. And what I've noticed is that phones for me and my colleagues tend to be driven around battery life and how much charge it retains. Whereas you're talking about components that are driven by the suppliers. Don't you find also the battery life is one of the main things that people toss the phone away because they get tired of charging it and it running out halfway through the day?
Right. Well,
is that not
that's
the case,
not,
Leon? I don't know.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Well, which comes now, I have to say that again. So there are phones where you can replace the battery, and so then this is not a thing anymore. Yeah, for you triggered another thing that sometimes people are not so aware about, and it goes in a different direction, but still the thing with phones, computers, and all that stuff is that different than it was for, and maybe still is, for what we call the whiteware, which is like laundry machines or fridges or stuff like that, is that for phones, PCs, most of the energy and most of the carbon emissions come from production. They are not coming from the consumption, which is different to these other instruments or hardware things we are using. And for a phone, it's over 80% of our carbon emissions are coming from production. So if you think about, like I did, well, sometimes I still do, I think like, oh, cool, I have this solar powered power bank and I charge my phone from that. Well, actually, it doesn't make a difference. That's just it's nice. It makes me feel good, probably, but that's all. Yeah. So yes, you're right, Neil. So batteries make a huge difference. Yeah. If you can exchange them.
There was a question from Rebecca. I'm not sure if you covered it. What would you suggest for ways to change the conversation from wants to needs?
So I'm not sure if I understood. So just I understood it as in general how to change the conversation. So one of the thing is like what I really keep doing is throwing in that sentence. If we do a planning session, I say, okay, how would the planning change if we think the planet is a stakeholder here? And this opens up a completely different discussion. And we might come up with the same thing, but having that discussion, that conversation helps us already to think more about maybe what can we do differently. And then the survey really helps for the team to bring this more to the awareness. And it also, well, for changing the conversation now, I often feel like it's not necessarily to find answers. It's actually more about coming up with better questions. And this, for me, is the thing of changing these conversations. Not sure if this really answered it, because I'm not sure if I understood the whole question. You're nodding, so maybe.
Rebecca, are you still there?
Hi, yeah, I am. Yeah. I was kind of wondering, you did answer it. I really like the idea of better questions rather than solutions. But I guess I wonder, it's like if you're working in a team, are you at the right level, or how is it possible to get the conversation up the chain as well? And is there anything that you've noticed particularly effective? But I love the suggestion that you made around just the planet as a stakeholder, and maybe not expecting that it's going to make a huge change right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if you say I'm speaking at the right level, there is no right level. It's just it's kind of start anywhere, and anywhere is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Because otherwise, I would thank everybody, also those that have departed already, to join. It was super interesting, Jutta. We will have the recording up on the Agile Alliance New Zealand YouTube channel, Agile Christchurch and Agile Valley's YouTube channel. Might take a few days until we coordinate, but it'll be there. So thank you all so much, especially Jutta. And those who haven't seen the recording, feel free to, or like haven't seen the beginning, feel free to see that as well, because it was super interesting. Those that have come in a bit later. And we will hang in after the recording for those who like to just unwind a little bit and talk about current situation, and those who like to drop off, feel free to do so. Thanks so much. Let's stop the recording now.